if you're wanting to become an outdoor content creator, this is going to be the podcast for you. I am so fortunate to be on the Rich Outdoors podcast and talking a lot about content creation. Not only are you going to get my insight and input, but you're also going to get Cody's as well, which is absolutely fantastic advice. He's a really good dude. I should honestly think about hitting him up as a mentor. So that's what this episode's about. And I talk about a course at the end of it. And if you're interested in getting paid for doing what you're already doing outside, click the link down below in the show notes. Enjoy.
Hi, man. Welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I am doing well, Rich. It's, we're out here in Oregon right now. It's raining as always, but
Dude, we were laughing because you're, right down the road from where I grew up. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. McMinnville, Oregon of all places. That's cool. So you quit are you leaving your job? Can we say that on the podcast now? Like you're going full time?
I think we can. Yeah, I think we can. The 2 weeks notice is already in. I put it in right after coming back from all those days off over Christmas and New Year's. And I haven't looked back since. I mean, I've always had this in my head for probably the last 2 years. And now it just felt right. Like it was kind of a series of small decisions. And then I got back into office and I just felt my energy just boom, just down. After I was just cranking out content and stuff, on break, being super productive. And I was just like, I gotta roll. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the moment you knew a desk job was not going to happen anymore?
Yeah, for sure. And I've always wanted an exit strategy, but you know how it goes. It's very comfortable. You get a lot of really good benefits. You get this and that, and you kind of start talking yourself out of it. And yeah, I think it's just like a slow at least for me, it's a slow progression. It was a slow progression.
Dude, I mean, it's super interesting. Actually, someone asked me yesterday, it's like, oh, when's the last time you had a real job? And I was like, well, I've only had like one ever. And the follow-up question was I was going to ask you if it was soul sucking. And then I was like, well, not really, because mine was so temporary, but I see a lot of people. And I see this, like, the longer you stay in that comfort zone, the harder it is to do like new things, to go out on your own, right? To me, it seems very easy, but I know no different. I don't know anything else. So for me, it's like, oh yeah, let's just create something. But it does seem like the longer you stay in that security, the harder it is to like go against it, especially when it's like, I'm doing my own thing. I'm going to go put all the risk on my own shoulders.
100%. And I think that because I didn't come from a family really of entrepreneurs like that, so it wasn't really in my blood, if you want to say. One of the things I think that helped me get to that spot is all the endurance stuff that I was doing outside of it. So like I ran 100 miles last year, right, at an ultra in Sisters actually. And,
Cool.
Did the JMT, did the Colorado Trail, all this stuff. And I think you realize, you start getting confidence into being uncomfortable. And I think I always go into I always have a big goal for each year. And going into 2023, I think what I wanted to focus on was business. Cause I think that's like the next, I feel like I did a lot of real physical endurance stuff that was tough. And now business, I almost think is the next frontier for me.
Right. And I think that's very true. And I think it's in the same way, I'm always like, doing extreme hunts, doing things outside of your comfort zone, all these things, like whether it's an ultra or, maybe it's a big adventure that you like, there's a bunch of unknowns, like going outside of that and having to problem solve throughout it is going to build your confidence to do the next thing, to do the other thing. Right. And you had kind of mentioned that you're from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's good. That's crazy. Well, it's not crazy. I mean, it's fairly common. But then you said you moved out to Oregon. You said you were into hunting, and we're doing hunting in Wisconsin back home. You moved out to Oregon, and that was kind of just like, okay, I want adventure. I want outdoors. Like, what made you kind of like push outside of like your home bubble, so to speak?
Oh my gosh. So you would always watch on the outdoor channel. I love the Western hunts. I mean, it was just such a grand scheme of things rather than what I was used to, which was whitetail hunting in a tree stand on my family's back 40. It just
Right.
wasn't. And I remember I would always go across the road to my uncle owned land, and he owned a little bit more land than me or us. And I would try to glass and stuff. And it's just like, it just wasn't this, like I tried to get into that zone, but it just wasn't working. And we ended up
Right.
taking a lot of snowboarding trips to Colorado actually when I was in college. And that's kind of what lit the fuse. Cause when you go snowboard over there, you come back to the Midwest and you're doing it on bluffs, not the same. And
Right.
so, yeah, I mean, I just graduated and I got an internship at Yamhill County Community Corrections it was a 480-hour unpaid internship to finish up my schooling. Just called them one day when I went to school in Minnesota. So just called them one day and they're just, yeah, they thought it was crazy that I wanted to move out there. I mean, I was 21 or something, and
Right.
looking back on it, it was crazy. So yeah, it was just the expanse and just the adventure for me.
And then what kind of pushed you into doing a lot of the ultra stuff or like the big adventures? Was that a progression of like, okay, I just got to do something bigger, something more?
It was, yeah. I started off with a 100-mile hike on the PCT, actually. It was from Willamette Pass to Sandy Am Pass there, and that was kind of the first thing that jolted me awake. That was in 2019, and so I'm a big fan of basically just
Right.
progressive overload, almost like. And so I just kept going bigger, bigger, and bigger and bigger every year. And last year when I did the 100-miler, that had always been a bucket list thing for me. And I thought, from through hiking and stuff where you're doing a lot of days just on your feet, I felt relatively in good enough shape to do it coming from those other 2 years. And so I just trained for it and then ended up completing it. So that was awesome. But now I'm like, wow, now what do I do? Yeah.
Right. Well, it's that's interesting. There's like this thing where it's like, if you keep pushing, you have to kind of keep expanding. And in the book Stealing Fire, he talks about this, and it really hit home for me because like as an adrenaline junkie, it seems like when I was younger, adrenaline junkie, it was like you always had to push the limit a little bit farther and a little bit farther and a little bit farther. And that kind of becomes your identity. And I think that can be true for extreme, like even like endurance athletes, right? Like you just like, you gotta do more, gotta do more, gotta do more. And then it just becomes like such a time thing too. It's like, I mean, you're training for 100 milers. It's like, it's so time intensive.
100%. I am so glad you brought that up because I always believe in life that I've probably been listening to too much Les Brown, his motivational talks. I love that guy, by the way. Turn back moments, right? And I had been training for this 100, and you're totally right. So much time. I mean, try to do creative work after you have a 20-mile training run on a weekend.
Right.
I would have to do my creative work beforehand because otherwise I would get back and I'm just zapped, and I can only do admin stuff or anything,
Right.
you know. I came back, I was at Smith Rock in Oregon. If anybody knows that, it's premier climbing. And we went and we climbed the first day, and then the next day I was gonna set up. I had like an 18-mile run, and I was like, sweet, I get to run in a different place. It starts raining and just rains and rains and rains. And I thought, dang it. So I drive all the way back, 3.5 hours back to McMinnville, and I still have this 18-mile run hanging over my head. Whole drive, I'm just sulking. I do not want to do this. Do not want to do it. I get home, it's 3 p.m. Still raining here as well. And I literally just sit at the end of the bed, and my girlfriend comes over, my now fiance, and she's like, what's wrong? I was just like, I don't know if I can keep doing it. And I was about halfway through my training at this point. And she was being very supportive, saying, hey, if it's not fun, if it feels like a job, you don't have to do this. I can tell it's wearing on you. And I thought to myself, but that's true. But I think this is one of those turn back moments. And so I ended up just lacing the shoes. I went out, I ran outside of McMinnville, did some trails, whatever, came back, did the 18, was soaking wet. But that was like the time that after I did that, I was like, okay, I'm going to complete this 100. No matter what, I'm just going to do it. I've trained this far, and that was it. So I always think that in life, especially with like, I'm sure you've had it in your business, turn back moments, probably every, who knows, every month there's probably one, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was kind of it. And yeah.
Which, I mean, it's good, and you have to push through those things. And I think it's interesting to me that you're taking a path. You're like, okay, instead of doing another 100 or a 200
Yeah.
or whatever, like even a new sport or triathlon, it's like, okay, how do I take this energy, this amount of dedication, and put it into build the next thing, which is building money, right? Or building a business or
Yeah.
building a job that I'm not, strapped to a desk, and something I want to do, something I'm passionate about. So that's cool. I mean, it's good for you. So you decided, was that kind of in the same time? You're like, oh, maybe there's a chance I could like kind of take this creator thing and run with it, or like, I'm sure there was a fires burning for a while.
Well, that was the thing is, last year was when I made the most amount of money from that, and evident it was weird because went month by month I was checking my QuickBooks. That was the month I ran my 100. I made the most money, which was
Oh,
kind of
really?
crazy, right? I think just things were catching up, but yeah, I mean, I started when I did the John Muir Trail, which is in the Sierra Nevada there. I filmed it for YouTube and I did all this kind of stuff. And that's kind of where I fell in love with filmmaking and telling a story and all that type of stuff. And when I uploaded it on YouTube, I got a lot of like positive responses from it. And I just kind of kept building on it from there. At the end of that, matter of fact, when I was doing the JMT also, I was flying home. I was in the Reno airport and my then girlfriend breaks up with me in the Reno airport as I'm flying home from the JMT. And it was actually at that moment too where I was just like, oh, that lit a fire under me too, right? And
Interesting.
so yeah, and so then I went and I was hiking with some buddies and I was on TikTok at that time and I hadn't had any traction, but went and I go up to the North Cascades there. We're going on a backpacking trip. I filmed this 7-second clip of eating a really good hack actually for the hunters as well. Instead of boiling water like in a cup with your jet boil, you can actually just boil the water in the cup and then put it in those nor rice sides
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like I filmed that. I just put it up, went viral, got a ton of followers from it. I was like, this could be it, you know.
This is my moment.
And yeah, that's my moment. And so I just kept rolling with that, kept rolling with that, kept rolling with that. And it kind of landed me in 2021. I was partnering with some brands here and there, but then 2022 came around and it really started picking up. And that was when I was really cognizant of once I started training for my 100 more, I was starting to
Mm,
get all these. And then I was really cognizant of, oh my gosh, I'm spending all my time doing this. So once I'm done with this, I'm going to focus more on the business side.
right.
And yeah, so ever since then, it's just been kind of scaling upwards. I've been fortunate enough with that, all while knowing you're on rented land with
Yeah,
social media.
with the TikTok audience. I mean, I think it's super cool. You kind of posted this thing that you made 60 grand last year,
Mhm,
just being basically a content creator,
mhm.
and doing your own thing from the onset. And we can kind of dive into like what's worked, what hasn't worked. But from the onset, I think most people would be in the boat of, hey, let's make a YouTube channel without much direction. Was that your initial thought, or like did you kind of, what was the initial, like, here's the business plan, if you will? I realize there probably wasn't much one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I didn't have one. It was just I wanted to. Really, it was more of I want to make an extra grand a year doing this. I think that would be awesome. I mean, eventually, I always in the back of my mind, was like, oh my god, I would love if I could replace my job
Right,
doing this,
right.
but
But
I
that seems
didn't.
too audacious to ask for.
Way audacious, right? And in 2019, 2020, that's where my mindset was. I just want some extra cash. Wow, if I can make an extra $50 a month off of YouTube AdSense, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And but again, it's just like that slow scale, that slow
Right,
progression of just going up. And so I do think that is sometimes people get into that conundrum of they think that they really need to have a business plan, which I think you do at like some point, but sometimes I think people get so caught up on it needs to be perfect and I'm not going to put out until it's perfect till I get a professional camera, till I get
right.
this and that. I mean, I just got my professional camera last month. It was actually on Christmas. I bought it off of Facebook Marketplace up in Vancouver. So, I mean, I've been filming with phones and doing all that stuff up until now. So, it's just a slow progression. I think that's where I really like just looking back every year and seeing the growth for me.
Right. I did funny. I'm anti business plan. If you want to go get investment, you might need a business plan if you want to go get money from the bank. But a business plan is a contract to yourself that you should not have. Like if in too many people get stuck on here's the direction we're going, instead of saying dabbling and saying what's working, what's not working. Let's keep testing, keep playing. And it's like a business plan is like, okay, here's the route. We're going to take this route, and they'll stick to it far too long. And it's like for most businesses, most small businesses, you need to just dabble and figure out what's working and what's not. And you have to be willing to scrap that small plan. So you may go in and be like, oh yeah, we're going to, AdSense revenue is going to, be the end all be all. And that's how we're going to make our living. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I make way more money from UGC videos. And all of a sudden now you're like, okay, let's move towards that. But if you had this business plan where you had to get to 1 million followers and then the AdSense was going to pencil out, you're like, you might stick to that plan too long instead of saying, oh, look, I can get $2,000 to work with this brand. I'm going to go this direction. And so like, it's just, I don't like the constraints that a business plan can put on things. Don't get me wrong. People get angry when you say that. So it's like, yeah, there are businesses that need it and reasons to have it. But for most small solopreneurs, like I think it's too constraining.
Yeah, I totally agree, because you need to adapt to what's working and what's not
Right.
working. Because first getting into the space, you have no idea what works and what doesn't work. So how can you have a business plan? So I
Right.
totally understand that. Yeah.
Right. So what was the first like success after? Okay, so TikTok kind of goes a little bit.
Mhm.
When were you like, I'm gonna reach out to a brand, or did brands reach out to you? Like, how did you kind of get going down that route?
Honestly, it's been a lot of inbound. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of inbound. And when I tell people that, like, I have a course and all that kind of stuff, and what I tell them is like, you definitely want to build relationships with some of these brands. But in the meantime, you want to also build your credibility on the social, on the whatever platform it is, because it's the social credibility. And so
Right.
they were seeing that, and then they just inbound you because they see all these hiking stuff, they see all this through hikes, and they see all this, and they want to be a part of that. And so as long as you can build that credibility and you have a good reputation in that space, man, you can get really good inbounds. What I've been telling people recently too, especially as they're trying to get into the UGC, the user generated content type stuff, is if you're trying to partner with brands and you have like a small following, you don't have that social credibility yet, follow the brand, but not like a Black Diamond, not a Onyx Hunt, not those types of brands. I'm talking about more startup brands that are just getting onto the scene. They're looking for smaller people to kind of promote their products, get you on an affiliate or something like that. And those are like the best people to try and build a relationship with, because then you can also kind of mold your content around. They're more open to your ideas. Let's just say that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And not even that, like just they're more open to your platform. Like, I would say in your scenario where it's like, you have like some TikTok followers and whatnot, you go to one of these big brands, maybe not now. I feel like big brands are starting to realize that TikTok
Yeah,
is the
they are.
platform, but like definitely in 2019, if you would have told, Black Diamond, like, oh, hey, I got these TikToks, they're like, yeah, no, thanks. Our marketing budget's full. It's just like, this is the way it goes. Like, it's just a
It's
different game versus, like I don't know, some headlight company that's, just starting out. They're like, yeah,
yep.
absolutely. We'll do anything. And
Mhm.
you build that relationship, and there's something to be said for, and the same is true. Like if you want to go get a job, getting a job at a startup that's growing fast is a great investment, right? Because you're going to move up the ladder quickly. The same could be said for like content or marketing generation. You have to assume, people get wrapped around the axle about this like influencer content creator. This is the new world, and you're essentially a part of their marketing team. Like you're just like, I don't know what the
Yes.
difference is. Like if you hired in the old days, you'd hire an agency and the agency would go create creative. Now they hire, social media creators, right? And it's like very
Yes.
similar. So people are like, get a real job. It's like, if I had a job with the marketing department of Black Diamond, would that not be a real job? Like, I don't, whatever. But
Yes.
if you get into that company that's growing and getting bigger, that's a huge opportunity to move up with.
Yeah, and learn great skills along the way because
Right.
they're learning at the same time you are, and they're more willing. I mean, you can be like in on the building process. You start learning things from them. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the places that I'm working with right now, yeah, they're the kind of startups or they want consulting and stuff like that, and it's I don't know, it's just really refreshing to see brands that are especially startups and things because a lot of the bigger brands they'll hire an agency to like an influencer agency
Right.
to find the influencer and then work with they're the middleman essentially.
Right.
I'm just not gonna lie, I haven't had the best experiences with them because there's a little more too much constraints on it. There's too
Hmm.
much constraints. Hey, we want this hashtag, but you can't have this one and this and that. And I'm just like, man, I don't it's an interesting format when they go, but I mean, it's a huge brand, so I guess they can afford the middleman. But for startups, it's like, yeah, just go direct. And
Yeah. I'd be curious, like, what's now that you've been in this world, let's say at least a year, but like you've been in the world, you've seen what the potential is. And I'm sure it's shifted from I just want to make an extra $50 a month to like, what do you think the potential is? And like, what's your end goal now?
If you're interested in this podcast, it's probably safe to say that you're either interested in creating content or you are creating content on your own. One of the biggest obstacles with that is finding the time to actually do it and to stay consistent. So, we are offering for a limited time a free content calendar for everybody that's listening. So, this is going to help you quickly capture your post ideas in one place, plan the details of your posts with an automated workflow, and to basically stay ahead of schedule at least 1 week in advance every week. Go ahead, grab it down in the show notes, and let's get back to the episode.
that's a great question. Yeah, so I mean, potential is totally replacing your job. I mean, 100%, and by a lot more. I mean, I work for a government agency, county agency, right? I mean, you're not pulling like that much dough out of that, and getting into this sector is like kind of mind blowing how much money you can make. Crazy. Now there is more risk because you could definitely recessions coming up, people getting laid
Right.
off a lot easier, but you got to prove that value. I think though with the end goal for me is like I don't have any goals in being like a millionaire really or anything like that. It's more of I want the lifestyle design. So I want to have enough money to where or passive investments to where I can go on a hunt when I want to, take off when I want to. I'm not like right now I'm working with some brands and they're awesome brands. I don't want to have a boss though for the rest of my life because I am kind of almost
Right.
they want certain things done in a certain time. That's fine, and they're awesome, but I don't want to do that like my whole life type of thing. And
Right.
so at the same time, I'm trying to also grow my own brand to be able to kind of monetize that. But yeah, I think it's going to be come down to like the passive income type stuff and just the lifestyle design for me that was really attractive. Living in Oregon, you only, especially in the winter, you only get so many good sunny days where you can go up to Mount Hood and go snowboard.
Right.
And I mean, I'm a big fan of the sun. And when you see those sunny days occurring during the week and you're at work and you got to be at work, it's the most defeating thing in the world. And I don't want that feeling anymore. And so that's why it's just a lifestyle design for me, really. Yeah.
Do you think that now that you've, taken the red pill, so to speak, do you think you could ever go back and have a job?
I really don't think I could. I really don't think I could because my fiance works similar place and I'd be like, hey, do you want to like she works near me. I was like, hey, do you want to like go on a break walk or something like that? She's like, yeah, but I have to be back in 15 minutes. Like I think there's they're saying now we have to send an email to them before we leave and an email when we get back. I'm just like, you're kidding me. I would never, sign on for that again ever in my life. And so yeah, I mean, I just no, I don't know. I don't know how people will go back. I
Right.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, hey, some people really like security, but other people like snowboarding on sunny days. So, like, yeah, take your wins. I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, what's your take? You're deep into it right now. You're talking to a lot of brands. I mean, you're probably going super hard for, you know, making sure you can make it all work now that you left your job.
Yeah.
What is the feedback from working with brands? And I think the route you're going is great. Like working with brands until you can build your own thing is like a great
Yeah.
way to go.
Okay.
Are you
Cool.
getting kickback from any of the brands working with them? Like, are they tightening up their budgets? What are you seeing?
Yeah, that's so one brand that I was working with, high profile like electrolyte brand, they actually laid off me and all of their creators kind of towards the end of this year of 22. And that was the only, but that was the only person I got laid off by. And but with my other brands, what I was like, oh my God, like I cannot get laid off by this. You know, if I do that, I'm gonna be really screwed. And so I was really focusing on building even more value at the end of the year because I was like, oh well, that's probably when we're gonna renew our contracts too. I mean, I always want to build value, but you kind of get that extra push to do it at the end, especially when I knew I was gonna kind of go full time into it. Now, however, that company though put me back on last month. So it was only a lapse of a couple months. And but I have asked some of these brands about them. A lot of these startup brands, most of them have money coming in from they're like I don't know what you would call them. They just own multiple businesses. So this is another startup business. So they're almost funding it. So it's not like they're borrowing the money per se, but yeah, they're getting the cash flow from somewhere else to pay it and run it. And so really with the places I'm working with, I don't, fingers crossed, like I haven't seen too much of it, but man, I mean, I'm staying on top of the whole recession thing and inflation and all of that. I mean, it's super interesting to me in the first place. And, you know, that's one of those things where is this the right time? Oh, maybe it's not. Maybe I should wait 6 months. Maybe I should. Yeah.
Dude, I think it's really important to say because I would not. I don't know. Like, on one hand, it's like, man, you got some cojones to do it. I'm super proud that you did it, and you're like, oh, I'm taking the leap, because it would be real easy to let that be an excuse on why not to do it. Having said that, I think, in my opinion, now is probably the best time, and you're going to go see more ad budgets get spent on things like this. Because here's what happens in the agency world during a recession is it's a reset. So most of the big companies have been working with the same agency for a very long time, right? And when budgets get cut, that's the thing that's going to get cut. But they're not going to stop marketing. What they're going to do is reduce marketing. So we're going to take that agency that was charging them $30,000 a month, and we're going to try to get creative. So I 1000% think you're in the right here, and you're going to see more brands reduce their Facebook ad spend and increase their TikTok creator fund, right? Like that's where the money's going to go, because it's, instead of 30,000, I now have 10,000. I just cut $20,000 and I'm probably going to get the same ROI. I think the timing is really good for like independent creators. And people are like, well, what does that mean? And so like, I mean, what you were doing, I guess we kind of skipped over it with some jargon, but it's like you're creating content for those brands that they can use, right, in certain ways, right? And either it goes on your channel or theirs. So like, as a independent content creator, you're creating, it doesn't even have to be advertising, you're creating content, and all these brands need content. So it's not like they can just turn off their funnel of content and advertising and all this, because there's a recession. They actually need to market harder to keep their numbers up. So it's like they still need to create that content, but it's easier for them to do it on the DL, like with a small content creator like yourself, versus going and paying, I don't know, what's that big agency in Portland that everyone uses? One of those agencies, right? And they're paying them a lot of money.
Exactly. I was just talking to my buddy actually. He's in the hunting industry back home, and he created this hyperheat pad. Actually, maybe I shouldn't say that. My buddy at home, maybe we could edit that one out. He created this pad anyway, and he's paying this agency to market for him, essentially, right? And he's paying a pretty good money for them to do it every month, but they're affiliated with like these big names in the Midwest hunting industry. And that's kind of why I think he's paying them, is because they have these connections that he eventually wants to get to. But meanwhile, they're supposed to be running his social media accounts. And I was looking at him and I go, bro, they're literally just pretty much posting like stock footage, like stock that you'd find on Unsplash of duck hunting and this and that. I'm like, you need to, why don't you cut them out? Stop paying them that huge sum of money. Do exactly like you're saying. Go to individual creators where you can just contract with them, or give them free product and they're super stoked because they have a small following still. Give them a free product, maybe an affiliate 10%, 15%, whatever, and you have that marketing. That's your marketing budget right there, instead
Right.
of paying that giant agency. Yeah.
I think that's going to be the future. I think this recession is going to be the end of a lot of big agencies, just because it's like, what the benefit of an agency was the Rolodex. Like the creative was good, but the reality was it was the connections, the Rolodex, like, oh, they work with such and such, like, and I don't think that's going to matter. And definitely not going to matter in like 2027. Like in a few years, it's not going to matter as much. It'll just be a more connected world. And brands, like everything's going to be different. Like I see it going differently. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but like I do think that individual creators, I think there's a lot of room. So, I mean, just like for a good example of like what the market potential is of like, could there be, a million creators? Look at how many TV shows, hunting shows, for example, were out there when we were younger, right? Like it was just running on TV constantly. But now you have you have basically micro TV channels, which are YouTube content, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
going to even spread out to like TikTok content. Like if we go to just vertical, and so like you could have a million different shows, and it's like these are just micro pieces that are
Yeah.
all that, and it's like all that all that viewership that was on Sportsman's Channel, Outdoor Channel, whatever you want to call it, and it like your space too. I just don't know the channels for that, but those are all going to be micro channels on YouTube, and they already
Yeah.
are, and you're going to see more of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, look at what Hush has done.
Yeah,
And I mean, Born and Raised. I
yeah,
mean, and and to and then the connections with their audience too. I mean, I don't know how much they're engaging in the comments and stuff like that, but I'm sure they were when they were growing, especially too. But I mean, there's just more of a connection with the audience. The audience has way more trust than seeing a commercial go on TV or whatever it is like that,
right.
and things like that. And it's just kind of a no brainer. I mean, it's just for marketing to me. Yeah.
When you thought about like, okay, here's what I want to do, did you struggle with, okay, what am I going to talk about and what is my channel? Like, did you ever go through that? Because I feel like it's easy for people to be like, oh, well, Hush is already there, Born and Raised is already there, like, this has already been tapped. And I don't know, it's kind of a cop out, but I see a lot of people struggle with what their voice is going to be, and so they just don't do anything. Did you struggle with that at all?
I didn't, because I kind of just use them as role models as to what I wanted my content to be. And then I started kind of evolving my own after that. So I kind of copied like the structure of, a lot of times with through hikes and things like that, it would be one episode for one day, day one here to here,
Mm,
day two here to here, and that was kind of my older content, and that because that's what everybody else was doing. And
right.
then I was thinking, man, actually I have a connect somehow. A guy from YouTube that works at YouTube saw my video, and I didn't know he worked at YouTube, but he's said, yeah, I mean, can can you talk to me about this upcoming hike that I'm going on? Basically, kind of like a consulting. This is at the end of 2020. I was like, yeah, man, get on with him. I help him out. At the end of it, basically, he's like, oh yeah, I work at YouTube and Google. Do you have any questions for me? And I'm like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And anyway, so he kind of put it in my head to do more documentary style, longer form, a 1 hour documentary of the whole trail rather than cut it up into sections, because people, or do both, because people like to watch it in two different ways. And so just that was kind of like the first thing that I started doing that was, I think, different than a lot of people that were doing the vlog style stuff. And then yeah, I think honestly what I do, dude, I mean, I'm pretty crazy. So every night I'm usually on YouTube, because that's probably my favorite platform to watch. And I'll go and I'll watch some hunting or inspirational skiing, whatever. And I'll have my notes on my Notion application next to me, and I'll keep taking notes of what they do that I like, what kept my attention, what did they do with that drone shot, how did they fly that, what was that angle, and now when I go like out in the field and I'm filming my own stuff, I'll just kind of quickly review some of that stuff, just put it like subconsciously in my head. And then I'll
Right.
kind of go out and just kind of take and pick little things from these people and that people. So yeah, that's kind of just how I form my style, I guess.
No, I think that's great. Like, I think most people struggle with like, oh, how do I have my own voice? How do I be unique? And honestly, like when I started a podcast, I was listening to a lot of Tim Ferriss, and my podcast in the beginning sounded just like that. And then it took me a while to kind of find my own voice and
Nice.
like become my own style, which I think is great advice. Like, if you don't know where to start, don't just go copy one person, because like copying one person is copying. If you copy three people, apparently it's your own innovation. But it's just like take
Yeah.
three people that you like and be like, take aspects from each one and then make it uniquely yours. And
Yes.
then you eventually will just kind of grow into your
Yes.
own little shell as you grow. But it's not a good reason to not start because you don't have the perfect
Yeah.
version. Like your first video is going to suck. Yeah, like, you have to force yourself to do it. And I did the same thing when I started podcasting. I was like, okay, I know this is going to suck. My first one's going to suck. It doesn't have to be perfect, whatever, as long as I get better as I go. Recently I was doing more of this video stuff and I was like, I want to get good at this. So I need to like force myself to do it. And that was a thing with the podcast. I was like, I'm going to produce every single week. And that deadline is like something I have to meet. And that made me do it. And it creates the habit, right? And so it's easy to be like, I'm going to create a video. Oh, it didn't do well, so I'm not going to do another one. It's like, no, do it every week and maybe set it like, okay, I'm going to do 10. And if it still sucks after 10, maybe I need to reevaluate my skills in life. But if you say 10 and my goal is only to get better, then like you're going to force yourself to like create a video every single week, force yourself to be creative, and it's like the adage that writer's block is a myth, because it's like you have to force yourself to be creative. And it's like you have to at least force yourself to put in the time to be creative, to like, okay, I'm going to chunk out this block and be creative and not make it a last minute deal. I don't know. For me, that's definitely, it was like a slow progression. It was not, overnight.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Yep. I heard a quote, my partner on the course, he said, do version 1 as soon as possible so you can get to version 2 as soon as possible, basically, right? Because
So
version
true.
2 is always better than version 1.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like something that's always like in my head. Yeah.
What do you wish you knew when you started?
Ooh. In terms of just like this whole social media web type of thing,
You can pick a category.
man, I I didn't, I mean, I honestly didn't realize how they were using this. The first thing that comes to my head is that I didn't realize how they were using this to for marketing. I would work with, when I was kind of smaller but still had a decent following, I would give brands rights to my videos in perpetuity, rights to my pictures in perpetuity. Next thing I know, I see a picture of me on Mount Hood in this clothing brand's store in Michigan when they just had they had like a grand opening there in Michigan. It was this, I won't name them, but yeah, it was I was like, wow. I should have charged more for that instead of just getting their hat for a free product.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, and that was my own fault. I was ignorant to it. It's just a learning thing, but yeah, I didn't understand that whole world at all. I mean, coming from a government agency, I mean, I have a criminal justice degree, dude. Like we didn't know any of that. I didn't know any marketing before this. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. And like, I think people knowing your worth is tricky. I've done this a long time. And like, knowing your worth is like, some
Yeah.
people think they're worth way too much. Some people think they're like, they undervalue it too much.
Yeah.
And understanding this concept that your worth is different to different brands, even the product you produce is different from one brand to another. Like at the end of the day, like, I don't know, a startup that's selling like a keychain thing, they can't probably pay you $10,000. They'd have to sell a shit ton of keychains, to make it work. But like, like, I don't know, like a major brand like Sika or Patagonia or something is like, those are different. And just in those two things is like, you have to cater your pitch kind of like to what what it's worth to that brand, because everything is different. It's not like your value. And I think it's easy to be like, oh, this thing I create is worth X dollars, and you put X dollars on it, but it's different from one brand to the other.
100% agree. And so for me, it's like, I want to have, especially if I want to partner with this brand long term, I want to give them the best ROI possible for this promotion. And as you know, I mean, social media, you can put a post out there, and I mean, it could be only seen by 3% of your followers. I mean, it's kind of bad. I think a lot of brands they don't really know, like, they just see the follower number and be like, oh, he's going to post, there's going to be 27,000 people that are going to see his post like this. That's not how it works. I mean, it's just not, unless you have a outstanding piece of content, which most of the time, for whatever reason, whenever you put an hashtag ad in front of something, it just kills the organic on it, which, I mean, makes sense because they probably want you to, put some ad dollars behind it. One thing that really works for me, that if anybody listening is trying to get into this space, is the simple question that I would reflect back to the brands. So they would say, hey, we want 2 TikTok videos. What's your rate for that? And when I had no idea, I mean, you can't just Google you get like 150 other random responses. So I would shoot back, what is your budget for something like this? And it makes them negotiate against themselves. And I learned this in a great book, what the heck, Chris Voss. He was an FBI negotiator.
I was just gonna bring that book up.
Yeah. So I learned it in that one. I mean, 9 out of 10 times they put a dollar amount that would have been higher than I would have quoted.
Super smart.
Yeah. I mean, every time it works. Yeah, it's crazy.
The other way to do it, a little key hack here, is to frame something bigger. So if you were like, you have to put it in context for the situation. But if you're like, hey, I did this project for such and such for $50,000. This is similar, but it's a lot smaller. What is your budget for this thing? All of a sudden, the new like norm just became 50,000. And so like, you're like, oh, well, we were thinking 10, and you're like, oh, cool. Cause I was thinking 200. So 10's really good.
Let's go. So that's like the classic anchor that he talks about in that book. I love that. I'm going to take that. Thank you.
So a lot of people think that you have to have a big following to be a content creator. They're like, man, I just, I don't want to build a following. I have struggled to build a following. I haven't even reached out to brands because they don't have a big enough following. What's your advice, or what's your suggestions around that?
I would say that you don't necessarily need to have a big following to make money in this space. I made money when I did not have as many followers as I had now. It makes it easier because you have the social proof, you have the credibility and stuff like that. But like, especially if you're below like 10,000 followers, 9,000, 8,000, stuff like that, and lower, I think it's super easy to partner with a brand and do like a free product exchange for a post or something like that. Because usually at that point, you're super stoked because you haven't had any experience with this, and da-da-da. Now, again, be aware, don't be a dummy like me and sign away all your rights, but without knowing it, like not knowing what perpetuity meant and all that. But then the other thing is that you don't have to have a large following to do user-generated content for a brand. You need to have a decent resume of that if they looked at your channel, but and they like your videos, so be cognizant of that when you're posting. But to be hired on for a brand or to contract with a brand, you absolutely do not need to have like a gigantic following.
No, I 1,000% agree. I think UGC is like super hot. It's the hot girl in town right now. And, if I was starting from scratch today, I would 1,000% go even if I just got free product, even if I had to go buy the first product, I would buy a product off Amazon, create a UGC video, and then I would send that to a brand like, hey, if you send me free product, I'll give you UGC, a video like this. And
Ooh,
then you're going to get the
yeah.
brand, the brand you want, right? And pro tip, that's going to start a relationship. So like tread lightly on that one and play long game. But then I'm going to like, okay, I'm going to build a portfolio, and then I'm going to have, I don't know, 5 videos that I do. And yeah, I only did free product. And this could be executed in a timeline of like a week or two. And because these are not high production, this is cell phone. Like it has more to do with how good your hook is, how engage, how quick the cuts, like all these things.
100%.
And then I would be like, I'd go out and I'd start charging per video, and I would not sign any long-term contracts because I know that in 3 months from now, my value is going to be much more. So I'm just going to constantly be like onesie twosies and building that portfolio. And then I'm going to go out and start trying to sign bigger contracts. Legitimately, probably going like, we can have a conversation after this, but would sign brands to monthly deals, so reoccurring revenue based on the UGC videos. And I'm all the while I would be building my brand. I'm leveraging those relationships to be like, hey, I'll do this for product trade, but will you post my video?
Yeah.
Basically, will you do one of those collaborative ones? And so like you would
Yes.
essentially getting paid to build your own channel for a year. You're probably going to do 50, 60 grand the first year. And
Mhm.
then you could easily like slowly transition into bigger like brand partnerships. And then eventually it's like, where it's just you have your channel, you don't even have brand partnerships anymore.
Man, you are a genius with that. That
I've done
is
this before.
a great, outstanding UGC plan. I love what you said too about it, because you don't know, going like not signing like a year-long contract with something to do in terms of like posting it on your own feed, because you're going to have
Right.
growth in there, so you can start charging more per your growth, right?
Yeah.
Huge point. And then the other thing is, I kind of just had a thought in my mind when you asked me like what I wish I would have known at first was, and I don't know, people's opinion might be different on this, but free exposure is kind of garbage in terms of that's all they give you. I mean, I signed on with this one people, and they were like, yeah, you make the YouTube video, we'll post it on our account, and oh, we have 40,000 subscribers and blah blah blah.
I mean,
How many people did I ever get convert to my brand?
right.
Hardly any, dude. And that was kind of a wake up call to me. So exposure is, you can at least do free product and an affiliate or something like that. It's just like the exposure is such garbage. Yeah.
And the other thing to think about too is like affiliate deals are never quite as good.
No.
There's some that work, but at the end of the day, like here's the problem with affiliate deals is that the average consumer, what it takes 7 touches. So if you go on and you're like, hey, check out this cool product, you're one of 7, you assume you're one of 7 touches that it sells that product, right? And so they're just banking on a retargeting ad. So you're at the awareness level. So you're like, hey, look at this cool new cup, right? Like, oh, great. And very, very few people are going to buy that cup from you.
Right.
And so like you have to assume like it's worth a lot more to that brand. In the early days, they're kind of necessary. Like when I started a podcast, a lot of my ads were all affiliate, and it was just like I would just like I couldn't get any, but I was like, okay, we'll just run affiliates to things and show people, right? And kind of get your audience in the tune of it. Because another mistake a lot of creators make is they won't do any brand deals, right? And so they go 2 years with like never have done a brand deal, and all of a sudden they do one, and everyone in their audience is like sell out, and they hate them. And it's like, oh, interesting. And so like, but the creators who from the beginning have always had it seem to have no problem with it. So a little pro tip, like sell something, even if you don't have to sell something, because it trains your audience that that's what they're there for. And the people
So
who hate
good.
it will leave.
So good. Yeah, because they're not going to convert anyway. And they're
Right.
just probably taking your free lead magnet that you're offering, just downloading it and opting out of
Yeah.
your freaking newsletter that everybody was a couple people did with me. Yeah, that's so good. What the heck else was I going to just, of course, now I just got sidetracked. Gosh dang it. I can't remember what I was going to say. I'll probably come to
Oh,
me.
No, I think that's just solid advice, and I think it's a good move for you, and I think it's definitely doable. I think 1000% there's room for a lot of creators moving forward. If the growth of TikTok, I would say, and I don't even want to say TikTok, the growth of vertical video consumption is going to leave room for a lot of content creators because brands need more content than ever. And so like there's plenty of room for people to make $100,000 a year, do what they love, have a great, lifestyle. And, that's pretty damn good money.
Yeah.
Better than
And
most
there's
government agency jobs.
and still love you, Yamhill County, but anyway, yeah. And the barrier to entry is so small because everybody has one of these, which is
Right.
a phone. If you're not
If
watching
you're
this.
listening.
So if you're listening, which you probably are, barrier to entry is low. And the one thing that I was gonna say, by the way, about the ads and stuff like that before was when you start monetizing your account, I've taken notes of brands or mostly creators when they integrate a brand into their into their feed or whatever. They integrate it in such a flawless way, and they almost make it comedic. They make it a part of a trend, like a trend on a reel or something like
Right.
that. It's not, I think when you first get hired on to do some sort of ad for a company, your first instinct is doing exactly what they do on TV, on conventional TV. And oh, here's my cup. I love this cup. It's got this handy little thing here that does that. Yeah, and it's like, and people can kind of see through the BS. Not maybe you're not BS and maybe you really like it, but like to connect with them, you really got to think and plan out this ad and integrate it organically in your content that makes sense with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing. It was like, I've said this too. And another reason agencies will die is because everyone who's listening to this can imagine you're scrolling through, choose your social media, and you see this like high gloss, high production, anything like, and you're like ad instantly, it like before they say a word, it's an ad, and you swipe real quick because you're so trained that like ads are super fancy, high production, and you're like, I'm on TikTok, like there's none of that. The best ads on TikTok look worse than, like almost like a crappy cell phone. They're not quite good enough, right? And like those are the ones that are converting because they look organic, right? And that's the thing, is like interruption marketing is getting very, very hard. And what used to work was beautiful imagery, cinematography, those type of things. What works now is that I have to get through the hook, and I have to get through maybe even like one of my deliverables before you realize it's an ad. And then that's the only way I'm going to keep you. And like, that's what's a giant shift in, if you say marketing as a whole. And like, that's why, some random dude shooting a thing on his cell phone of why he likes a product is better converting than like the glossy high cinematography version shot with a red that's all about it. Because instantly, if I see like it's shot with the red, like I can almost tell, like I've been scrolling videos that are just cell phones, right, and normal people, and all of a sudden something comes across and it looks
Boom.
different. You're like, oh the hell, get out of here.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, our brains are totally built to recognize what's
Right.
not fitting with the pattern. Yeah,
Totally.
that's such a good point. Yeah, so I mean, like you're saying, tons of opportunity
Yeah.
and low barrier of entry. You don't have to be the world's best editor or the best filmmaker or whatever. It's just all about integrating it organically. That's going to resonate with people in your niche. That's it.
Cool, man. You have, you have a course. I want to talk a little bit about the course. I saw it.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go through it. For fun fact, I just started on Notion, like
Yeah.
probably early December. So I'm pretty new to it. And I'm like, I love this Notion app. And then I saw a lot of your stuff is in Notion. I was like,
Yes.
super smart, so clean, well organized. Like that's the hook for me. That's like, oh, I love how clean and organized that is. So tell us a little bit, like you have a content creator course. What's it called? The Content Creator Academy?
Outdoor Creator
Outdoor.
Academy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us, like, give us the pitch.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. I mean, like I said, back in 2020, when I got into this, I would try to Google things, information.
everybody had such differing opinions. And you just could not figure there was no continuity with anything. And then everybody was in like a different niche. It was fashion, it was this and that. There wasn't really any outdoor like influencers that I found, or any of that UGC or anything. And so I'm like, I think that there's a market for this, because I want to help people that, like, my thing is, I know the daily grind of a 9 to 5. I know that feeling. I know it's soul crushing. In fact, well, that wasn't even an ad that I did for the course, but it just did really well on organically, probably because there were so many haters, trolls just ripping me apart, by the way. It was hilarious. But I was getting all these DMs from people like, I'm working this 9 to 5, help me get out. I don't want to do this anymore, because they love the freedom of the outdoors. And so, yeah, I created this course, I think there's 43 videos, and kind of what makes our course different than just going on YouTube and watching people's stuff is, one, you're going to learn the concepts of what makes a good video, viral video and stuff like that. It's not just like, here's the algorithm, da 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 da, because that changes every 2 weeks. In fact, we have a private Facebook group where I just kind of go in there once a month and I give people updates on what I'm seeing so they can stay up to date. But the thing is that really makes it different is that it's a guided course. So we have assignments in Notion. So after the end of a module, it's like, here, we gave you a market research template. We want you to research Cody Riches, or whoever person in your niche that has a really good, like someone you want to be strive to be. And we have a bunch of prompts, like, what is it that's making their content pop do you think? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? All these different things, right? And so for each module, we have different assignments that guides them through and actually holds them accountable. Instead of just watching video after video after video after video, they get done with the course, they know all this information, they just haven't implemented it. And now it's like, oh, I know all of this. Now even where do I start? So we break it up into modules like that, and then we do the assignments in Notion. And then, yeah, as you were saying, in Notion as well, we have templates like a content calendar, scheduling your videos, a hooks database where I put in, like, I mean, I'm crazy. Like I said, I every time I see a hook and I like it, I go into Notion, I write it down. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I just give it for free, and then you can add on to it. And yeah, so just a bunch of different templates like that because we understand most people are going to be doing a 9 to 5, right, and there's going to be a lot of time involved in that. So we introduce strategies to batch content, create content fast, figure out what works, what doesn't work. We give the templates to cut down the workflow on that.
Dude, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, if I could say anything, I think it's too cheap, but I mean, for $99, I'll just buy the templates. I'm like, yeah, cool. Yeah. I mean, like, if you can't, like, you take that course and don't make $99 as a creator, like, you failed. You didn't pass the course. No.
Yeah.
No, I think
that's what
good.
I thought. Yeah. I appreciate that, man. You know, and in the comments, people are like, oh, that's how he made all his money, is $60,000. Actually, I released a V1 of the course that was terrible. I mean, it was V1. I made $700 from it total. All the other stuff, 70% is UGC. So everybody in the comments like, oh, that's how he makes his courses, from dummies like you buying the course and all that. And I'm like, actually, it's not. And then, you know, what's really interesting is, you know, Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah.
He DM'd me personally.
Oh, wow.
After that video went up, he DM'd me personally and he says, Chad, keep building. I have it printed out. It's at work, of course. He says, Chad, keep building. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I guarantee he saw that post. It probably went in the comments, saw me just getting thrashed left and right by some of these people. Most of the comments were really nice. But yeah, he said that. And I was like, man, you're such an inspiration, you know, da da da. He's like, Happy New Year. And it was really crazy.
Way cool. Way cool.
I know. And then the next day he posts a story about talking about, you know, hating on other people isn't going to make your life any better. And so I'm like, I wonder if that's so crazy. And so anyway, yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, dude, that's cool. Good for you. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the problem with TikTok, is it's kind of just I don't know if the comments are worse than YouTube, but they're both pretty bad. It's just tough to keep moving forward and be like, you know, I'm failing, but you're not.
So
one thing we put into the templates is a positive comments template. So it's essentially just a page where you can go screenshot positive comments, you put it in there. And
That's
then we
cool.
didn't put it in for the course for this one. Well, we did for the positive comments, but for my own self, I also have a hater motivation one. So I screenshot those, and you're on the treadmill or
Put
you're
them in
running or
Notion.
you're doing whatever. Yeah, oh yeah, it's in there and it's powerful. It's good stuff.
Dude, that's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
Where's the best place to send people? You want them to go to your TikTok, to your Instagram? Does it matter?
Instagram's probably the best, and then if you have any questions, you can DM me there. But link in bio with the course and stuff. And I also actually have a free Notion template available too in my link in bio, which is all about like hiking goals, and it's a good itinerary planner and stuff. Really cool stuff to look at. So people have
Dude,
been liking
Notion's
that one.
sweet. I'm digging
I
Notion.
know.
I like just kind of getting into it, but like seeing all these templates you can just download. I don't know. I'm kind of an organized nerd that way, and like
Have to be.
yeah, it is, but like you also don't want to get caught like what they call gardening, where it's like you're just doing too much planning or like making lists and lists and lists, but never actually accomplishing. So like yeah, I'm a huge fan of it so far. I haven't played with it a ton, but yeah,
Yeah.
way cool. I'll have to check
Yeah,
it
it's
out.
not. Yeah, it's not too hard to learn. It's you could get up on YouTube and stuff like that. But I found it to be. I mean, matter of fact, before we started podcasting, I was in there organizing all mine up because it's been kind of a mess lately.
That's
I'm
cool.
like, oh my god. So
Yeah,
yeah,
dude. No, that's awesome. Well, cool. Well, yeah. What's your Instagram handle?
at Chattahoochee _
Chattahoochee. I like.
Yeah.
All right, man. And TikTok's the same thing, or what's TikTok?
Yep. TikTok, same thing. Yep.
Cool, man. All righty.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Keep building. I like it.
Keep building. Yes, that's the word of the year. Or phrase of the year for me. I think. Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Cool.
Uh-oh.